everyone, this is Professor Benjamin, and this video's purpose is to give you a walkthrough of the final exam. So as we move closer to the end of the semester, I just wanted to give you a walkthrough like I did for the midterm exam. So where do you find the final exam review? If you click on modules and you scroll down to the population section, you will see a review for the final there. I also have included a review for the final here, and this is where you'll find the walkthrough for the final exam, this video. I'll post it there after I'm finished wrapping up the video. You can see here you get one chance between September 7th and December 13th, 11:59 to complete your final exam, okay? And then I'll have them graded and those, of course, the grades put into the final portal. All right, so here is the review for the final exam. It is the same setup as the midterm exam, meaning that you'll have 3 hours and one chance within that time frame. So if once you begin the exam, you cannot stop the exam and start it again. It all has to be completed within one sitting, so find yourself a time block in order to complete the final exam. Here is the review for the final exam. I have made some edits to it, so if you've printed it out before this video, you might want to go back and look at the revised final exam review sheet. Here is the final exam review sheet, and you can see that it is not a cumulative final. It will only cover air, climate change, urban ecosystems, population, water, renewable and non-renewable energy. You will be given 3 hours and one chance between the dates given in Canvas to take your final exam. You must use Google Chrome or Firefox to take your final exam. Do not have other web browsers or tabs open during the final exam, as it may cause freezing. If your exam freezes, I cannot reopen the exam. You will have 14 questions on your final exam. If you prepare, all you will need to do on your final exam is copy and paste into Canvas and edit your answers tailored to the questions that are asked. The answers to each question should be at least one full paragraph in length. At least 4 sentences is one full paragraph. Each part of the question does not need to be a paragraph, but rather the entire answer as a whole needs to be a full paragraph. Some answers will be more than a paragraph in length, so you're probably going to want to give me more than one full paragraph if you think that question requires that. So for the first session, air pollution, the question in your own words. So remember, this answer cannot be from the internet, but rather through the text and through your own words. Explain the ozone layer, explain the purpose of the layer, how the layer is destroyed and how it can be fixed, what protocol was enacted to stop CFC use in developed countries. You'll want to make sure that you're detailed in that answer. I have sent out a roundup with this answer in it, as well as the climate change answer. So if you want to go back to your previous roundups and take a look at that, I know I sent out the answers to those questions, or what I'm really looking for in the answer. Okay. Session 8, climate change, in your own words. This answer cannot be from the internet, but rather through the text and through your own words. Explain climate change. Be sure to include how the greenhouse effect is related to climate change, pollutants responsible, and the consequences of climate change. Explain how climate change is related to global warming. Okay, that is a huge part of the question. This question is going to be multiple paragraphs, as well as air pollution, as well as the ozone layer, because you're talking about many different, there's a bunch of questions within the question. This answer is given in the module, and it'll talk to you about, I really want you to discuss the way that the water circulation systems are related to that. So I want you to talk about the ocean currents, the vertical as well as the surface ocean currents. I want you to talk about those and how that is going to change the climatic conditions, and that's because the Earth is warming with the melting of the glaciers in the oceans. Because the oceans are warming, they changes the salinity of the oceans. So I want you to talk about all of those factors, and you can find that, what I'm trying to get to, in the roundups that I have sent out. The next one is give examples of mitigating efforts in relation to climate change and give examples of adaptive efforts in relation to climate change. I want multiple, so it says give examples, which means more than one. And you can find these answers in the textbook related to the chapter reading on climate change. There are adaptive and mitigated efforts given in the textbook. The next session was urban ecosystems, and both of these answers can be found in the textbook. What are at least two consequences to urban sprawl? And what are at least two characteristics of sustainable urban planning? Remember, these answers need to be at least a full paragraph in length, so one-word answers will not work. You need to make sure that you explain what you mean by those answers. So if you say a consequence to urban sprawl is the decline in well-being of individuals, I want you to explain what that means. I want that to be a little bit more detailed, orientated. So there you go for that. Population, what are two social consequences of the One China Child policy? That was repealed in the fall of 2015. You will, this week was, of course, the answers to those questions were within the, where some of you picked to answer that in the discussion post. I will send out a roundup, of course, with what I'm really looking for. Some of you hit it, some of you did not. So I will definitely do that. What does the term carrying capacity mean? That can be found in the text in the chapter related to population. Why does the human population need to remain below the carrying capacity in order to be sustainable? This was also a question that was given in the discussion post this week. So you want to go back and, of course, you can look at some of your classmates, but some of them may not have answered the question to what I was looking for. But you can also find this answer in the textbook. Of course, it will be lack of resources. So lack of access to clean, fresh water, lack of food. So there's a lot of issues with not being able to, overshooting the carrying capacity line. The next session is water, which was what we will cover this week. Why is the water cycle important, including your explanation, all of the parts of the water cycle, including evaporation, transpiration, condensation, precipitation, groundwater, surface water, and runoff. And this is included in the chapter on water. So I want you to really make sure you answer why the water cycle is important. Don't just say because it recycles water. I want a good answer there. I want you to explain why we need the water cycle, why there's only so much water on the Earth's planet, and then why that needs to be cycled through the system in order for the water to be distributed properly to all species. Okay. What are permeable versus non-permeable surfaces and their effect on runoff? What are the environmental consequences of runoff surface? Well, I should say surface water runoff. I apologize. There's a little bit of a spelling error there. Define point source and non-point source pollution in relation to water. Give two examples of point source pollution and two examples of non-point source pollution in terms of water, not air. And both of these answers can be found in the textbook, so you'll find those answers in the textbook. What are the consequences of bottled water use? And these can be found in the video, The Story of Bottled Water. And also, I think they briefly talk about this in your textbook, but this is, of course, a major issue in the world right now because of microplastics, meaning that plastic bottles, they break down in the sunlight and they become smaller objects. So the plastic really never goes away. It just becomes smaller in size and it's reflective in the sun. So, of course, species that, bird species, fish species, aquatic species, etc., ingest the plastic, and we're finding large amounts of plastic in all sorts of species throughout the world, and it's becoming a major issue. In fact, we're even finding microplastics in humans because we are in contact with so much plastic on a regular basis. We also ingest those species who have plastic in them. All right, session 12 is non-renewable resources. I want you to explain the difference between renewable and non-renewable energy and provide examples in your explanation of both renewable and non-renewable resources. So I want you to explain what the difference is between the two. Why is one called renewable and why is the other called non-renewable? And you can find that answer in your textbook. And then I want take one issue with fracking as discussed in Gasland and explain how it is a tragedy of the commons. Remember to include the resource which is shared and the short-term gains versus the long-term interest. This answer needs to be at least 300 words and contain facts from the film Gasland. So I want you to make sure you follow that. I really want you to tell me why what the short-term gain is, and what the long-term consequences are to society of us fracking for natural gas. Section 13 is renewable resources. I want you to describe in detail one type of renewable energy, not all renewable energy, but I want you to pick one. So I want you to pick either solar or geothermal or hydro or wind. I want you to pick one type, and then I want you to give me 3 advantages and 3 disadvantages, and I want them to be detailed advantages and disadvantages. So this question is going to be definitely more than 1 paragraph in length. Remember, again, I do not want you to give me overall 3 advantages and disadvantages to renewable energy. I want you to pick one, and then I want you to go into detail on the specific one. And then the last question, why are renewable energy sources less likely to be accepted by the mainstream population? And that can be found in the textbook chapter, Reading for Renewable Resources. Okay, and of course this can be found in the textbook and readings in the modules as well. So that is a little bit of a walkthrough and what I'm looking for on the final exam. Of course, feel free to reach out. I am more than happy to answer your questions. Be specific about your question, you know. Tell me what you know already, and then I can help kind of fill in some of the vacancies or the holes. Please don't just email me and say, what's the answer to this question? Because that is what your job is on the final exam. Okay, so feel free to reach out. I look forward to your final exams, and you can start preparing now. That's the best way to do this. And then when the final exam comes, you really only will be copying and pasting answers in instead of actually studying for the final exam. Have a fantastic week, and I look forward to your final exams.